Hello and welcome to the Executive Hub, the show that helps you grow your business with simple tips, strategies, and stories from successful entrepreneurs. My guest today is Dr. Josh Funk. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Fantastic. Looking forward to our conversation. And we're talking about the playbook for performance-driven healthcare. And we're going to dive into a very interesting conversation about that. So let me do the proper bio for Josh, and we're going to dive right into it. Dr. Josh Fung is the founder and CEO of Rehab to Perform, a cutting-edge physical therapy and a sports rehab company with 12 locations across the DMV region. A former division athlete turned entrepreneur, Dr. Funk has built a brand known for redefining the healthcare experience through innovation, education, and a strong community presence. Under his leadership, Rehab to Perform has become a market leader by focusing on movement, performance, and empowering people to be better than yesterday. Josh, how's your day so far?
It's going great. I'm actually moving tomorrow, so a little bit chaotic.
Oh, yeah.
And, overall, I mean, gosh, it was tax time last week. Closing on a loan as an entrepreneur is unbelievably challenging for anybody out there that can relate. I'm sure you can remember jumping through a million hoops. And overall, I'm just looking forward to the process being done and being in a new spot.
So you got everything in boxes right now?
Looking around, yes.
Nice. Yeah, I've been there.
Yep.
Moving is like one of the most difficult things. Like when you move your house, it's a lot of work.
You don't fully appreciate how much stuff and how much time it takes to pack up that stuff. So fortunately, we did a good job, and movers will take the rest from here.
Beauty, whereabout are you?
I'm right outside DC in Maryland.
Nice. So let's dive into it. Josh, I know you probably want to get back to packing. So let's get this started. What is your story?
My story is I grew up in a very, very physically active household. We tried a wide variety of different sports, a wide variety of different activities. We were always encouraged different season, different sport. And that ties in because physical activity was a significant part of my identity. That carried over into high school, then college, where I played lacrosse at Ohio State. And it was not until my sophomore year where I experienced my first significant injury. So up until that point, I'd never really interacted with healthcare. I had a torn labrum and was told at the end of the season I was going to need a surgery or surgery. And it was during that time period where I really, really enjoyed being in a rehab environment. It was like, okay, I'm hurt, but this is not the worst thing in the world. I walked into the training room. Other athletes on my team were there. Other athletes from other sports were there. It was enjoyable. It kept me connected to the coaches, connected to my strength coach. I developed a great relationship with physician, athletic trainer, physical therapist. Overall, I was like, okay, if this is what healthcare is, I could enjoy this, and I could see myself maybe even doing this at some point. And then I went home for the summer to rehab my shoulder further, and I realized the difference between what I was provided and what is provided to the general population is night and day. And that was where the idea for Rehab to Perform came about. I knew that I wanted to pair my interest in physical activity, my overall interest in fitness, health and wellness, with the physical therapy side of things. And I knew that I wanted to create something that was much more aligned with what I was experiencing in a college environment that I knew was also provided to professional athletes, and bringing that to the Gen Pop. So Rehab to Perform, may have started at more of my roots with regards to keeping my identity from an athletic standpoint. And that's largely what people should experience in healthcare. But that idea eventually became a reality in December of 2014. And here we are a little over a decade later with 100 plus employees in 12 locations in what's known as the DMV, the DC, Maryland, and Virginia region.
Very nice. What was the main sport you were involved in?
Lacrosse.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And it seems like you hurt yourself a few times. And
yeah, that was sophomore year. It was my labrum. I pulled my hamstring freshman year, but fortunately only had to miss 2 games. Overall, when you talk about injury history, I have been very fortunate. I had a lot of more minor things Nothing that really had a significant impact on my ability to participate. Nothing like where I was missing a full season. So, knock on wood, at some point I decided at the age of 25, I was just done playing. I enjoy coaching it to this day, but I'm better off watching.
Got it. So what inspired you to start your company? Was there like a specific moment or idea where like I need to start my own business and get this going?
I always had the entrepreneurial bug. For anybody out there that's ever been on, part of a newspaper that gets delivered to your house, I was your paper boy at some point in time. So I was doing that as my first job. I would hustle, get the papers in the morning, bag them or band them, put them in a bag. Sometimes my mom would drive me in her minivan and I would throw papers out the side, but I hustled to get more neighborhoods. And I understood that, if you can align expectation and value together, that you would benefit from that. And that spun off into me also mowing lawns, doing swim lessons, eventually lacrosse lessons, a lacrosse company, a lacrosse services company with camps, clinics, and club teams. It was actually my first business that I started in 2011. I sold that in 2018, 2019. But I've kind of always had that entrepreneurial bug. And my mom would joke and say, you really didn't have a choice. You weren't very employable. You always thought you had your own ideas and you had your own way of doing things, and this was inevitable. So, through a 12-year-old paper boy walking through your neighborhood to now where you have your doctor of physical therapy and you learn how to put pieces together to do something more than just yourself. Entrepreneurship was kind of written on the wall.
Fantastic. So what do you do these days and who do you serve?
We serve active adults, competitive athletes, and individuals looking to live an active lifestyle through physical therapy, sports rehab, concussion care, peripartum care, and pelvic health. So those are different subcategories, all under this umbrella of physical therapy. We approach it, we feel like, different than a lot of different places out there, in that it's nice to focus on and talk about pain, but if we make that the only focus, we could create a repeat patient. We want to make sure that we're building a new baseline. We want to make sure that we're focusing on competency and capacity-focused rehab, knowing that if we build out this curriculum of movement for you, your body becomes more capable, and we're more likely to push you in a criteria where we've reduced your risk for future re-injury.
Fantastic. And so what are the typical problems that people come to you with?
A lot of times it's a disruption in lifestyle. So pain could be a disruption in lifestyle. I could have an inability. I could have swelling. Those are probably the biggest buckets. And then sometimes we will get people after a surgery where they had some kind of catastrophic ailment or something that might have just gradually been building up over time. And then it's up to us to what we call kind of reverse engineer the process. We see you at your starting point. You communicate to us where you want to go. It's up to us to work on the plans and process to kind of build out the curriculum for you of what we feel like gets you to that endpoint.
Josh, what do you see as the number one or maybe a few root causes of people hurting themselves while, playing sports and being active?
I could probably go two separate ways with this. And I think for the youth athletes, we are specializing more and more. Youth sports has become such a significant business that you have kids that are told that they need to play sports year round, the age of like 8 and 9. Otherwise, you're not going to be Messi. You're not going to be LeBron. You're not going to be Ovechkin, which we know in our world is just wrong. But because of the privatization and the push and the monetization of youth sports, that's the message that largely predominates. Those individuals aren't as physically competent. They are good at one sport. They're highly skilled in one area, but they might not have a great movement profile. So they do the same movement pattern over and over again, potentially contributing to overuse, or just putting them in a situation where they're not as physically competent. If you think about PE, if I was a really good PE generalist, I could probably play a lot of different sports and different activities. But our young people, we get people that can barely balance on one leg, have trouble skipping backwards, basic things that we feel like, if they had more exposure, they'd probably be and this is supported through research, but in an area where they would be less likely to hurt themselves. With the older population, a lot of times it's too much too soon. You have an older individual, they've had time away from whatever activity it is that they would like to perform. They jump back in. Let's say it's just running. Too much too soon. Then we end up with some kind of tendinitis that might turn into a tendinosis, or potentially we might have something catastrophic involving a ligament injury or a tendon injury that would be more serious and potentially require surgery. So those are probably the two biggest buckets. Unfortunately, one of the things too that is kind of behind the scenes, but chronic pain is something that we will see. That often is seen with other health factors oftentimes, as well as being often associated with the spine. So, neck, mid-back, low back, those areas in particular are often populations where chronic pain will be a little bit more prevalent.
Fantastic. How important is working out, prepping the muscles and prepping the body and keeping up with the activities, especially for older people or any, I think, age, with respect to preventing injuries?
I'm gonna kind of go back to our roots here, and we mentioned physical education, PE class. It's very, very good to have a foundation. So we could view a foundation in different areas. One would just be your physical ability. So it could be just baseline physical competencies. Can I balance on one leg, sit to stand with one leg? Can I get to the ground and off the ground without using my hands? Can I skip steps? How well can I just at baseline move myself? Can I do small things like a high knee, certain more dynamic single leg balance activities? Can I skip? Can I hop on one leg? Some of these things that we would equate to probably like early stage PE. Let's call that general physical activity. Then we
Mhm.
might have more specific physical activity. So for an individual that wants to do something that might be more of a sport, how well can we introduce or prepare ourselves for that sport? There might be
Mhm.
some kind of time associated with the activity, which then oftentimes would tie into our energy systems or our conditioning. We have the aerobic system and the anaerobic system. Yes, there are more factors going on there, but for the audience, we'll oversimplify this. You need the ability to just perform lower level activity first over a broader amount of time before potentially doing significantly intense activities. Otherwise, you'll do one activity at a certain intensity and you'll quickly fall off a cliff. Your second activity or your second bout of that exercise will be 75%, your third at 50%, your fourth at 25%, because you don't have that underlying aerobic engine to provide your body with the energy that it needs. So those are the
100%.
two biggest ways. Can we create physical competencies in ourselves so that we can move ourselves well outside of a weight room? We're not even talking about a weight room yet. And then can I potentially put myself where I'm doing that activity at low levels, sub-maximal levels, for a longer duration before layering in what a lot of people might think of when they think of like HIIT or interval training, but a bout of a short interval, a slower period or a rest period before doing that interval again.
Mhm. Yeah, so the reason I asked that is I'm a ski instructor myself,
Awesome.
and I'm very active, like hiking, skiing, a lot of stuff. And then when I ski, I see some people that, they're typically active during the summer, and their activities like, walking and, some hiking and this and that. And when the ski season comes, they just show up on their skis and they start skiing without any sort of muscle building, any like, prepping the body for all the forces that are going to apply to their body. And I could tell from the way they walk that this person is not ready. So we have to do a lot of warm ups. It's like, do you, and I'm like, do you like go to gym? Do you maybe try to build up your muscles? They're like, no, 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 I'm good. I walk, I hike, and I'm pretty good. And then they go, next thing you know, they tear a muscle, or they injure their knee, and you know, I'm sure you see that all day long.
Unfortunately, yes. We are the worst liars to ourselves, to be quite honest, especially as we get older. We have a belief that we are much more capable, potentially as capable as we were when we were younger. and we don't realize how inactive we are in between ski
Mhm.
seasons. And it's very similar to golf. Golf is very, very similar. We have
Yeah.
spring to fall, then you have this winter period where we don't do anything. And we will get people in the beginning of spring and they are just crushing the ball, the driver. My back hurts, my hip hurts, my
Oh, yeah.
elbow hurts, my shoulder hurts. Well, you haven't done anything like the past 4 months.
Right.
Oh, well, I'm active. I'm around. Like, what
Yeah.
kind of activity? Let's actually talk about this. And I think that's where it's very, very important to have objective measurements that guide your perception of wellness. And I think that's for us. I mean, you heard some of mine, and I mentioned them. Three things in particular: getting in and out of a chair with one leg, getting to the ground and off the ground without using your hands, and can you go up the stairs without using a handrail and skip steps? Then the other part would be a VO2 max. I've got good movement capabilities at baseline, but do I have the energy system? So then you got the VO2 max. For something like skiing, I probably would want to do some lunge variations. I probably would want to
Yep.
do some single leg squat variations, right? And let's be honest. I mean, gosh, I could be wrong, but you're up in Calgary.
Yep.
Okay, there are some longer slopes there, right?
Yep.
I haven't been on the slopes. I've been up at the slopes in Whistler, but you're talking about being on a run for, let's say, an average of
Half an
15
hour.
minutes, right?
Yep.
Half hour even, yeah, right. So if you don't have the ability to hike for 30 minutes straight, I mean, let alone walk for 30 minutes straight, let's maybe take it a step further. Maybe we're doing jogging, or maybe we're rucking, walking with a pack on. Like those would be some more preparatory activities, but I would want to be very
Mhm.
single leg or lunge oriented, strong, in addition to being able to repeat physical bouts of activity for an extended period of time. And you have some people and they're like, that would be foreign to them, and then you might have them out there and they might get humbled really quickly and they might go, you know what? You're right.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah, I always say the mountain will punish you and humble you very quickly. Know your limits and know that this is what you can do, what you can do not push your limits on a mountain.
Absolutely. Especially you're
Yeah,
skiing, you're going
yeah,
downhill. Like you are moving. Momentum is happening for you. You don't even have to
100%.
create it. So can you control it? And yeah, that's
Gotta be careful.
skis you could see going every which way and somebody's yard sailing, and then unfortunately they're getting carried behind one of the ski instructors or Sherpas or whoever's on the responsibility there.
100%. Do you ski or snowboard?
I can do both.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
I
So I
only
learned to ski
ski.
first and then I shifted to snowboarding. So a little bit of both.
Fantastic. Josh, give us an example, like maybe a case study of a client you work with. What was the challenge that they had, and how did you help them
That's
overcome the challenge?
It's a good one, and sometimes that's really tough to pick just one. So I think the biggest challenge, and I only will say this to generalize it, the psychological side of physical therapy is the single most challenging part. The physical side, when you get into the biology and healing and understanding how the physical stress response can affect an individual depending on what you give them, what you dose for them. The psychological side is much more variable. I could give you and somebody else similar things with you having similar backgrounds, similar injuries, etc. And you, depending on what you experienced before that particular encounter, could be you could have a wide variety of different things going through your head. So as
Mhm.
a physical therapist, I also find myself as more of a mental and emotional therapist in the fact that I have to get to know you well enough to figure out what your thoughts are with regards to the plan and process that I put together for you. It is
Absolutely.
challenging to unpack previous biases, situations, circumstances, experiences, all of the things mentally between your ears that you're bringing into our interactions together. And
Yep.
without me sitting down and the listening word, I actually have to listen to you to tell me all of these things. I might be in a situation where I want you to do X, Y, and Z, but because of this, there's a complete mismatch. And I have lost the ability to create a bridge with you. And the biggest word that we will use a lot of times is the therapeutic alliance, which, then the word comes alignment. But without listening, without understanding the individual between the ears, you're going to make things really difficult for themselves. And sometimes with individuals who have significant medical histories, you do need to start there and definitely allocate a lot more time and energy to that. But if you allocate time and energy to it, it will take somebody who might have in the earlier stages of my career seemed very, very difficult and made them much easier.
For sure. Just so you know a little bit of background, I run a marketing agency, and I've worked with a lot of physical therapists and chiropractors. So much so that I've almost become a physical therapist and a chiropractor myself. Like I do some adjustments on people, like, Anyway, so years ago, and I know this is a common problem. My chiropractor told me, Mustafa, your upper body, your shoulders are very weak. You need to start lifting weights and strengthen those muscles, because as we get to late 30s, early 40s, it gets weak because we sit in front of a computer all day, which is a common problem. So I ignored that advice, and about over the past 2 3 years, I almost dislocated my shoulder 2 3 times, each of them. Skiing and skating, I fell on my elbow and it almost popped out right back in. I had like very limited range of motion. Anyway, and then my left arm here got really really bad. Took me a year of rehab to kind of fix it back up, and then 3 4 months ago, I was chasing my kid at home, and I went around to grab him. So I turned my arm around, kind of like a full 180 or 360 or whatever you might call it. And as I reached out to grab him, my arm almost pulled out of my shoulder,
Ooh,
and I'm like, holy crap, this is a really big problem. Then my buddy, he's like, hey, you want to go to the gym? I'm like, yeah, I actually do, because I'm about to lose my arms. So I've been working out since January, actually. And I've built my shoulders have strengthened quite a bit. And I've been working on my rotator cuff muscles and the rest of it. I'm sure you could give us probably 3 hours of lecture on that.
yeah, I think it's tremendous. I mean, when I think of skiing, I think of one of the most frequent injuries with an upper body. It's called a foosh, fall on outstretched hand.
Mm-hmm.
You fall on outstretched hand, a lot of times there's a significant impact and you have compression that can drive forces to potentially dislocate. Now,
Mm-hmm.
some of the situations you mentioned too, there's also a pulling effect. So you talk
Mm-hmm.
about distraction. So I need to prepare myself for hand impact because I'm probably going to fall, right? Or elbow impact. And then I need to prepare myself to potentially have my arm, maybe out to the side and kind of pull behind me. And you just want to build out your training accordingly. And we want to get strong, potentially with heavy weights for lower repetitions. And then
Mm-hmm.
we also want to potentially put ourselves in a situation where we are doing things that are not quite as heavy, but we might want to do it with varied tempos. Sometimes doing a slow eccentric,
Mm-hmm.
faster concentric, or sometimes doing a quick eccentric, knowing that sometimes I need rapid movements in both directions. But I think if we were to oversimplify, we have those three. You'd have push pull in front of my body, and I would have push pull overhead, and that would largely generally prepare myself. I think for some of the situations you're mentioning, and you could do this with like a athletic training table or the back of a couch or a countertop. But single arm
Yep.
push-ups on something elevated would be really good. I don't know if you ever use the TRX. You use any of these straps? Like those would be pretty good as
I
well.
haven't done that yet.
You
I've been
know.
doing the cable and I've been doing the dumbbells,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I'm very happy with the amount of muscle I've added to my shoulders.
Yep.
But I haven't done the TRX. TRX is really good. I haven't got into it yet.
You could do it. You could do it for sure. That'd be great for you. And then one of the things that people don't do it enough, and we do it a lot more with like our contact or collision sport athletes. If you think about athletes that are hitting the ground a little bit more or hitting each other a little bit more, but if you were to kneel on like a yoga mat and just fall and catch yourself, but you need to be able to catch yourself. For those
Oh
higher
yeah,
level athletes, you should be able to go from a standstill. You should be able to stand up and just fall and catch yourself.
yeah.
And if you can do that in a controlled environment, we feel a lot more comfortable with you doing that in an uncontrolled environment, which is sport. But if you
Oh
can't do
yeah.
it in a controlled environment, we can't guarantee that it's going to go remotely well when you're out there in sport and somebody knocks you down unexpectedly, or you catch an edge on the moguls and you're going down.
Then you're done. Yeah. Funny enough, I think there was a course on how to fall when you ski because
I,
there's an art and skill into it, and a lot of people actually hurt themselves while falling, and they just do dumb stuff that makes it worse.
I would agree. I think that going back to the PE discussion, for individuals that don't have great body awareness, um, falling looks really ugly sometimes.
Yeah,
And you hate to say it, but some of their basic movements just don't look very graceful in general. So I could see the benefit in that. I think individuals that maybe are a little bit more physically capable, that are a little bit more fluid movers, probably it comes very natural to them.
absolutely. So you mentioned picking up heavy weights with lower reps. I've heard mixed messages on that.
All right.
So one idea is doing higher weight, lower reps. One idea was lower weight, higher reps for hypertrophy. And so, what is the deal here? Because I still haven't come to a conclusion on that yet.
Variety would be good. Why not both?
Try both.
Why not do one for maybe 3 months, and why not flip it up and do another one for 3 months, or two and
Got it.
two? Variety is good. Our body typically does really, really well with variety. So let's say maybe one day of the week, early in the week, it is higher weight, lower reps. Maybe later in the week, it's higher weight, lower reps. But we do want to make sure that we have a body that is going through full range of motion,
Hmm.
B, being progressively overloaded, not doing too much too soon, and doing things to increase muscle mass. So if we're hitting
Right.
a little bit of a spectrum and we know that we're going potentially close to failure or to failure, we're probably going to be in a situation where we're building muscle mass. Muscle mass is a great thing for longevity. It's good to have body armor overall. And then we know by having exposure to both of those, we might be more able to, let's talk about high weight, low reps. Well, in that instance where I need max effort or max intensity because I'm
Hmm.
falling or I'm hitting something or something, I I want to know that my muscles are going to perform.
Yeah.
Or if I'm moving for 30 minutes down the slope and I'm moving my arms, did I better prepare my arms for repeat repetitions with
Hmm.
smaller, less intense activity, but maybe 15 to 20 reps? Most likely, right? So there is going to be some benefit. A lot of times there's benefit to some fluctuation or changes in your programming, especially over the course of time. To make sure, again, we're not doing the same thing. And again, muscles and tendons do really, really well to variety.
Love it. Being ready for different kind. I like your comment about what I would interpret as knowing your limits. Like, don't push it too hard.
Right.
Know what you could lift. Like I go to gym like 3 4 days a week now, and I see people like with I could tell the way the guy walks. He's a beginner, and he would go in and try to lift 200 pounds. Like, bro, you're gonna hurt yourself.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
you're
Yeah.
gonna hurt your muscle, and and then you're gonna be injured at home for like 6 months.
It is
It's
one
not
of
worth
those
it.
things. We try to tell people, especially on the running side, because it's a little bit easier to dose for some people. Where if you're running for a certain duration, the rule of 10%, right? We probably shouldn't increase more than 10%
Mhm.
week over week. So if you lifted 100 pounds last week, you probably don't want to go lift like 130 or 140. Like, why don't you just lift 110? Like, if you just
I like
move
it.
the needle 5 to 10 pounds every week, look where you'd be by the end of there. 52 weeks times 5 pounds. That's not even possible. Nobody's gonna put 250 pounds on any lift.
Yeah,
So why would we try to do 30 pounds in a week? Like, it just doesn't make much sense. You might even be better off with the two and a halves.
right.
Aggregation of marginal gains. It's one of my favorite quotes. Aggregation of marginal gains. Marginal gains get us. I mean, think about compounding interest. I mean, we're not investing here. We're not doing a financial talk, but if we if we're on the 1%, or what does 3% look like over time, and what does compounding look like over time? I think a small incremental change on weights is going to get me
Much
exactly
better.
where I want to get to. Yep.
So I have more of a personal question on that, and that's the topic of weights in our joints. So my partner, my workout partner, he likes to lift big heavy weights, right? For example, we were doing chest and he would put, he likes to do 3 plates on each side and go as hard as you can. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, one, I don't want to damage my joints. Two, I don't think I need 300 pounds to lift 300 pounds.
I would agree. I think bench press and curls and some of that stuff gets attached to men a lot more. I think that's kind of like a comparable. I think that the funny part about, and I turn 40 next year, so I'm kind of in this same bucket. But like men, as they get older, for some reason they become so focused on their upper body, and we don't walk on our upper body. We don't play a lot of sports on our upper body, and our upper body largely doesn't lead to many changes with regards to our overall levels of independence or mobility. So why do we allocate so much time on pushing, pressing, or pulling weights? Like, unless you're in a
Mhm.
manual labor job, like, would you be better off spent focusing on your trunk, your core, your lower body,
Yeah.
things that contribute to your overall health span? Let's talk lifespan, health span. I could live long, but if I'm not independent, my health span is going to be pretty minimal. So I would agree with you. Pushing 300 pounds, it's cool. Could you be in a situation where, maybe the weights don't treat you well at some point in time? I mean, yeah, if we just press heavy weight, high weight, low reps all the time, might not be the best for our body. Power
Mhm.
lifters and weightlifters do not have tremendous quality of life over time. There's stuff to support that through research.
Is that a fact?
So yeah, if you look at it, because of some of the injuries that will pop up with some of the loads, some of the forces, and they're
Yeah.
doing those same movements
Mhm.
repetitively. As we get to 40, 50, 60, do we need to be doing max effort lifting all the time? Kind of gets to my early
Probably not.
conversation. Do we do it for 2 to 3 months? Do we do it maybe one day of the week, and the next day of the week we do something different? Are we incorporating other training modalities? Are we doing cable work? Are we doing body weight training? Are we doing some dumbbells?
Mhm.
What type of things are we doing to support? Knowing that, again, I can't think of anything in my 40s to 80s that pushing a different amount of weight would help me, unless I need to push a car someday for one reason or the other, which at the end of the
Yeah.
day, I hope I have strong enough legs to be able to push the car.
And
So
or call the tow truck to come do
yeah,
it. Right.
exactly. So you're like, all right, well, what's that help me? If it doesn't help me get in and out of a chair using only one leg, get to the ground and off the ground without using my hands, or skip steps, I'm not saying it's less. Well, yeah, I'm saying it's less valuable.
All right.
It's not
Well,
as correlated. So yeah.
personally, I want to be healthy, and I hate to be grounded. So I want to have healthy muscles. Want to have my power. I want to be able to ski well into my 90s. And I was talking to my buddy. He's like, "Why do you go to gym? Like, why don't you stick to work?" I'm like, "Bro, I have a 6-month-old baby. I need to carry his ass for another 20 years,
Yes.
right? Right? I need to. My kids wrestle with me. I don't want to be the dad, be like, son, I am dead. I can't do this. I'm tired. Go play with your friend. I don't want to do that to my family.
Or tell them to work hard in whatever it is that they're doing, and not be working hard on my body myself. Like, I need to
Yeah,
be
exactly.
showing you. And I don't know about you. I have a son. I have a 4-month-old son. I want to be competitive with him as long as I possibly
Yes.
can.
Yes.
Like, he's not going to beat me when he's 10. Absolutely not. Like, you can beat me when you're like 14, 15, when you start to become like a young man, but we're not going to be like incapable of competing. I'm going to block him in basketball. I'm going to beat him in lacrosse. I'm going to throw the ball further than him. I'm going to ideally beat him in a race for a certain amount of time. And
Yeah.
then eventually, hopefully he surpasses me. But if I don't do anything, gosh, yeah, I'm the dad that just sits in the chair all the time and just watches and tells, as opposed to demonstrating.
Exactly. And what kind of example is that for the kid?
Absolutely.
You
Not
know.
the kind of example I want, right?
Exactly. Beauty. Josh, what are some of the milestones you guys have achieved over the years?
I think the biggest thing, there is something for the readers out there, if they're not familiar, or the listeners, if they're not familiar, called Inc. 5000. We have been on the fastest growing private companies in the US for the past 5 years. Cross
Nice.
my fingers, we might be on it for a sixth time. We recently hit this past year, hit the 8-figure mark. And after this year, we will hopefully not just go over the 8-figure mark, but be closer to 20 than 10. So we're really kind of hitting a nice stride. Outside of that, the other thing that I'm very prideful of, it's one thing to have fast growth, but it's another thing to also have a great place to work. And great places to work is an outside certification. You send all your emails over to an outside company and they survey your team. And we've gone through the process with them and we've earned that certification the past 2 years, gotten really good feedback, all 80s and 90% with regards to the criteria that they're judging us on. I'm not saying we're perfect, but we do have a great place to work and not just a fast growth, because sometimes with fast growth companies comes at the compromise of culture and working environment. So those are probably the two big ones. And then I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but going over the 100-person mark from a team standpoint, it's particularly gratifying just to create that many opportunities for people where, we are providing an opportunity for people to contribute to something while also having 100+ people be able to put food on the table, pay their bills, potentially invest for their future, etc.
Nice. Lisa is saying her kids surpassed her at 17 in running a half marathon.
Hey, that's awesome. I actually have a half
Yeah.
marathon in 10 days. What was I thinking, Mustafa? Why am I doing a half marathon?
You're doing it in 10 days?
Yeah, 2 Sundays from now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah. I did my first one last year. I'm going to do at least one a year. I'm just going to stay in enough shape to just be able to keep doing it.
Dude, I think the move that you have going on is gonna help you with all the workouts you need.
So I didn't tell you this. I'll tell you this now, the audience. I lived in Canada for a summer. Is Williams Moving still a company up there?
Canada's a big place. I don't
Okay, I
where
lived
did
in
you live?
Vancouver. I lived in Burnaby, right outside
Maybe
Vancouver. Yep.
oh, yeah.
And I worked as a mover for the summer while I lived in Canada for the summer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I haven't heard of them. No, they may be big in Vancouver.
gotcha. Hardest job I've ever had by far, but I
That's
was
a
in
tough
great
job.
shape. Oh, brutal,
It's a good
brutal.
workout every day, all day,
You want to talk about
especially
getting
hard
like
on your back.
definitely. I mean, I was in college then. You want to talk about getting man strength quickly? That's it.
Get a moving job.
Yeah, definitely.
Or a landscaping job. That builds
Oh,
you up pretty quick too.
definitely. And it also made me really appreciate what I was getting into. Respect to anybody that does that all the time, but it's not something I wanted to be doing for a long period of time.
Fantastic. So, Josh, what were some of the challenges you guys faced over the years?
Biggest thing, definitely, for a lot of people is the pandemic. That was very challenging. It was the
Mhm.
most, it was the time we had the most constraints, the most amount of things just saying you can't do this or this isn't an option. That was either by the government or just overall like public sentiment. So you had to get good at things you weren't used to being good at. For us, we were largely like a very outreach oriented organization early on. We were very big on handshake and a smile, in person, doing events, doing lunches, doing meetings, having people to the clinic. You can't do that with marketing during the pandemic. So we had to get really good at direct mail, stuff online, social media, obviously the digital advertising space. So that was entirely new. We didn't have a really robust internship program. So we built out an internship program. Communications wasn't something that I really had focused on a ton. We had to get really good at internal and external comms. How could I communicate things to our team effectively? We brought Slack in the fold to really help us with distribution of information. We got better at internal email newsletters, both for our team and both for patients. So some of that stuff, I think the pandemic forced us to learn. In the
Mhm.
beginning of the business, the beginning of the business is tough. It's more reactive learning. When you're
Yeah.
in the beginning of your business, you don't know what you're doing. So it's just strictly reactive. Stuff pops up and you're like, oh, I need to do that. I need to do that. I need to do that. So those are probably the two more difficult challenges. I think right now we are so focused on we made it 10 years. How do we make it another 10 years? So
Right.
right now we're working on a lot of like foundational back office, HR, legal, accounting, onboarding, offboarding, stuff that ideally just makes interacting with our company a very, very streamlined for patients and for our staff. It's not the sexy thing, like the delivery of the PT or doing anything in terms of your patient provider interactions, but it is the thing that supports and kind of is the glue and keeps things together. So, this entire year, we're only adding one location this year. And we're largely working on things that we feel like will make the company easier to run or easier to interact with. That includes automation, new technologies, AI, updated systems, things that, again, simplify, streamline, and overall make it harder to screw up whatever that it is.
Love it. Josh, what would you? First of all, congratulations on reaching 10 years. I know there's less than 1% chance for a company to reach 10 years,
It's
so
tough. Yeah.
that is amazing. What would you say is holding you or your company back right now?
I think the biggest challenges that we largely are facing is the rising cost of student debt, the increase of real estate prices, and the relatively flat salary or salaries, which largely are a result of the healthcare system, where provider reimbursement is not increasing at the rate of the cost of education and the cost of homes.
Oh
So
yeah.
increasingly concerned that you have a future where you're going to have less providers because people go, well, there's not the ROI here. Why would I go pay this for education to get paid this to not be able to buy a house? I might be
Hmm.
better off going somewhere else. From a healthcare system standpoint, I think, not to oversimplify, but I do think largely if we found a way to simplify how healthcare was delivered, needed less administrators, less middlemen, quote unquote, less non-billable people, less non-providers, you would be able to get more money to providers. If you can get more money to providers, you're probably going to end up with more passionate or invested individuals. And if you remove non-billable people, you probably could bring down costs while still getting more money to your providers, and that would be the macro goal. Because
Interesting.
if we can pay providers more, but we can also decrease costs because we need less non-providers behind the scenes doing stuff that, quite honestly, is just burdensome for most individuals, whether or not it's the providers themselves or the patient. And then at some point you have to address the cost of education. And then obviously the big inflation word is getting thrown around, and that's a challenge that I think probably goes far beyond the what I can comment on this call. But yeah, big three:
Yeah,
education, real estate, wages. Something's got to give.
those are big problems.
Yep.
Have you figured out a way to address those?
I haven't, and I think the biggest thing is, unfortunately, it's probably going to take provider shortages to have people go, okay, we've been ignoring this problem for a long time. You're going to have educational institutions that go, we can't keep charging this. And then you're going to have the government and the healthcare systems go, we've got to fix the way that we deliver healthcare in the United States. It's too complicated and it's too complex. We shouldn't need all these extra people to deliver care. It should be more simplistic. You shouldn't have a disproportionate amount of non-providers to providers. You should have a
Yeah,
majority of providers. You should have a few support staff, but you should have a very disproportionate ratio with providers to non-providers.
right.
We don't.
I think eventually it might get to a point where they would end up importing providers, PTs from other countries,
They could.
because there's a shortage here. Is that like, I'm guessing there's a physical therapy association down there?
Yes, and they do take a lot of heat. There's a perception that maybe they don't do enough, or the things that they do aren't largely focused on things that involve finances. I think finances, again, education, wages, if those aren't the first two things you're talking about, that's largely what people are talking about when they want to think about their future career. How much money am I going to put in to get trained to do the thing, and then what's going to be my ROI? I would argue that all young people should be thinking about ROI when they're thinking about whatever it is that they're doing.
Josh, how are you doing for time? I still have a bunch of questions, and
I'm
we're
good.
still I good. Okay, so yeah, it seems like would the physio association then go around and work with different partners and people that are involved to fix a problem that big?
Uh, it would be
Like,
a
who
good
would be
start.
in charge of fixing that?
Yeah, I mean, the national association should be at the forefront of it.
Hmm.
I do think as a profession, we could be better at overall involving ourselves and mobilizing. especially when you look at healthcare. Healthcare is the top inflationary industry of the past 20 years in the United States. And we're talking
What do
about
you mean by that?
the costs in healthcare
Has gone up.
have gone up so significantly, more significant than any other industry. So your cost, and then the problem with that in the United States is what are the outcomes? Are we healthy or are we not as healthy? Come on, you can say it. We're not healthy. So we spend all this money, and then we have higher chronic disease than anywhere in the world.
Spend and the money, stress is through the roof.
Oh, stress. Yeah. Stress is definitely part of it. Inactivity, food.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You see another
phones, big all the phones that we're on all day long causing us stress and oh my goodness. Anyway, you mentioned AI and how you guys are using AI. How do you use AI in your business?
Most relevant, I just created an HR assistant on Monday that helps people with onboarding and also allows our team to ask questions that would relate to our handbook, policy, procedure, benefits, stuff like that. So we are trying to find a way to have AI either simplify things for our team, serve as assistants for our team, potentially get me to a point where I have a report quicker. I could be using ChatGPT. I could be using Zapier. I could be using Gemini for email or my G Suite. If anybody's using Microsoft, that's kind of the parallel to Copilot. So, you have these different applications that people are using. And then on the EMR side, our electronic medical record, the electronic medical record is starting to take in information from an intake and then pre-populate certain things based on the information that's input. So serving as an assistant for us to get documentation done easier, sooner, also making it just overall less burdensome. If I can spend more time with patients and less time with documentation, I can serve more people. And quite honestly, I can also make more money. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's amazing. Yeah, AI is changing businesses.
It really
quite
is.
a bit. And I think there are a lot of people that still haven't started implementing, and I think they're going to be behind in a year or two.
I heard this last week. It was a CEO, I forgot, it was obviously one of the publicly traded companies on the New York Stock Exchange, so big company. And they mentioned we are reevaluating whether or not we need to hire more people or if we just need to focus on maximizing AI to see how far we can take things. Would we rather add people or would we rather add levels of artificial intelligence in our company ecosystem? Getting back to the wages part, something that I'm conscious of, if we can make more money with the same staff, everybody gets more money. That's a win for everybody. Total comp per person goes up. So if we could do that with the support of AI, that's an amazing thing for our team. So that's why we are also messing around with it. AI makes things easier. It makes it harder to potentially have things screwed up. And B, if it can allow us to have certain levels of efficiency, you're able to increase compensation benefits for everybody in the company ecosystem, which 100%. Obviously is, again, it's an important thing.
Going back to the earlier big issue you were talking about, I think if you reduce costs and increase wages for your PTs to be able to, keep them around and hire new ones, that's going to hopefully fix a part of that problem.
Definitely. It is something we track every year. We also try to embody that provider to non-provider, talking point, making sure that we're not bringing on too many non-billable people. We need to be very efficient with who we bring on that's not a provider, knowing that just creates additional bloat. So AI is allowing us to get as efficient as possible with front office and back office to make sure, again, that the main focus is the providers, and that we don't have ratios that just would be less ideal with provider to non-provider.
Fantastic. Josh, who's had a major influence on you or your business journey?
I'd say probably my mom, to be quite honest. Yeah, she's just always been a hustler. She's in sales. She can talk to just about anybody, hard worker, very, progressive. She's very to the point and direct. And she definitely is just, she juggled a lot throughout the course of my childhood. I've seen her be super mom. And overall, it's been a nice just kind of person for me to model myself after in certain respects and learn from her journey especially the fact that we're relatively similar people. So, I
Very
do
nice.
use her source of inspiration, source of feedback, for me on a personal and professional level.
Fantastic. Love it. If you had to go back, maybe you started this company 2014, right?
Hmm.
Or so. If you have to go back to 2014 and give yourself one piece of advice when you were starting the business, what would it be?
Ask more questions sooner. Early on, you just don't know what you don't know. You're trying to pay down that tax of ignorance, and I think that I didn't fully get good at resourcing my problems until we opened our second office in 2017. I think it took me a little while to really sit down, objectively look at how I was doing and where we had shortcomings, and do a better job of resourcing those shortcomings earlier.
Love it. Yeah, the ignorance tax is a big tax. I've heard like Alex Hormozy talking about that as
Yes.
well.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, the
Exactly.
ignorance is like, dude, ask questions. Don't let the ego drive you around. And
Exactly.
we pay a
Exactly.
lot for it. So we talked about performance driven healthcare, and I said I have a lot of questions. We haven't even got started
Right.
on that. So, and you said it took you, I would say, 3 years to open your second location. Tell us about performance driven healthcare and how you went about expanding and getting into like now 12 locations.
So that second office we opened, and it honestly was a complete disaster. For anybody that has opened several locations, your first location is largely dependent on your brain, your sweat, your ability to do the thing, but you're in it all the time. So it's a lot easier for you to control things or use the people around you, who have been like sounding boards because of close proximity to do the thing. But when you open up a second location and now you have to split your time between places, and you have new people that haven't been around you all the time, and you have this expectation of where your first location and that second location being like it as quickly as possible, you realize how quickly you have to have a process driven business.
Hmm.
Thankfully, at some point early in my career, I heard that companies compete on process. And it was about the point in time where we were going through that second location. I was going through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program up at Johns Hopkins here in Baltimore. And I learned that I had no SOPs, I had no cheat sheets, I had no ways of training people, and that anything that we were good at in the first office was largely in our heads. So then you start to put together your playbooks, which
Hmm.
obviously ties into the title, and you start to have a playbook for different areas of your company. You have a playbook for marketing, you have a playbook for conversion, you have a playbook for service delivery, you have a playbook for billing, playbook for accounting, playbook for onboarding, training, offboarding, legal, HR related stuff. And you start to put things in place where people are supported with a process. Now, it's not just important to set a process, but it's also important to have feedback loops to evolve a process. Think about it like your iPhone. Early on in our journey, we had the first ever Apple iPhone. Then we opened up the second location. We had our version 2.0 of the iPhone. But what does iPhone keep doing? It keeps evolving. So we had to
Hmm.
keep continually coming up with ways where there was feedback loops that we continued to evolve our processes, knowing that if we wanted to be a sustainable business, survive, and not just survive, but thrive, that we were going to have a playbook that was undefeatable. And at this point in time, we've been able to get that playbook in all of those different areas better and better and better. It makes the business easier to run so that now when we have 12 locations and I add a new location, it's not like doing the proportionate level of extra work. It's just, okay, bring the people in. Here's the playbook. Follow the playbook. Do the thing. Are you good? Cool. I'm here if you need me. This person's here if you need me. This person's here if you need them. This person's here, and so on. But if the playbook gets better, it's not a increase on the level of work every time you add a new location. Instead, I find myself largely working less hard than I did, say, 5 or 6 years ago,
Yeah.
which obviously is something that a lot of entrepreneurs are shooting for.
So how do you keep track of performance in 12 different locations? Are there like numbers and KPIs that either to report to you and you check, or do you go in? How do you go about that?
Yes. So weekly KPIs will be things that we're looking at on a little bit more of a, kind of a fine tooth comb, magnifying glass. I will look a lot more at monthly KPIs under the belief that even if we set something new in motion, there's a time associated with, change actually happening. And then quarterly KPIs. We will have them in our different buckets, really the big five for us: marketing, conversion or front desk, the billing side of the house, which we'll call back desk, we will call the service delivery side, and then the financial part. So those five different areas really, really tell a lot about the organization. And then there's some things that I do at the end of the year with regards to just facility efficiency, overall marketing efficiency, provider to non-provider ratios, compensation for provider to non-provider ratios, things that allow me to kind of have these CEO KPIs that tell me I'm doing a good job or not.
Fantastic. Seems like you are following a model like scaling up, or am I wrong about that?
Scaling up's good. Get scalable is another good one. But I would say very, very similar. Yes. And then
Love
we
it.
have hints of EOS,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, or the EOS model with Gino Wickman,
Hmm.
the book Traction there. So, anything that we do, we have been inspired by somebody else. And at the end of the day, we just try to make it work for our organization.
Very nice. Very nice. So what's like a day like for you? Are you like just running as a CEO, managing and monitoring things, or are you involved in, are you still treating patients? How do you go about that?
I treat patients a little bit more on a case by case basis. I actually just wrapped up with a handful of professional clients last Friday. They went off to their respective off season for the NFL or training camp for the WNBA. So I will go through waves depending on the time of the year. Right
Mm.
now, next week, it will largely be just CEO managing and monitoring, showing up at offices, ideally at least once a month, just to say hi, check in, have meetings with leadership, still have a pulse on everything that's going on. But the team knows that things move and improve in the company when I'm not seeing patients, although they also know that I do miss and I do enjoy seeing patients. So coming up with a little bit of a flow and obviously be able to kind of fluctuate in and out with regards to roles and responsibilities is something that I have the luxury of doing.
Beauty. Beauty. Josh, do you read books?
I do. I find myself listening a lot more than reading, though. So with Audible.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Fair enough. Give me two of your favorite books of all time.
That is a great. I would say a big one is going to be Jab, Jab, Hook by Gary Vee. For anybody who's obviously followed Gary Vee over the years, but that was a very important one for me to better understand marketing. And
Hmm.
then, gosh, good question. Good question. I think if I had to, Crucial Conversations. I grew up in a very
Crucial.
direct conversation style household, and I realized not a lot of people can handle that. My mom was a military brat. My grandfather was a colonel in the Army. As few words as possible, we're going to communicate with each other. That doesn't work for a lot of individuals. Um, you have to be a little bit more graceful with regards to entering challenging conversations and just overall painting a little bit more of a picture before you then have the conversation and finding safe ways to exit. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just not something that I was very familiar with or felt competent with. So learning about it, knowing that the company was going to continue to grow and I was going to continue to have those kind of conversations was important for me.
Fantastic. What's one piece of advice that made a big impact on your life or business?
The quote that I referenced earlier, I would say the aggregation of marginal gains. And it goes kind of like your weightlifting concept earlier, where we're talking about adding 30 or 40 pounds, but small things done well in multiple areas aggregate in your life. If we talk about health, sleep, movement, nutrition, mindfulness, if I made a small tweak in each of those four different areas, think how much better my health would be. If I make a small tweak in marketing, front desk, back desk, service delivery, finances, those five different areas, think how much different my life would be. Maybe if we're talking about personal relationships, there's different small tweaks, but they add up, and they are investments. So if I think about those as making an investment and a small micro investment or dollar cost averaging in all of these different areas, I'm probably going to get where I want to, just like I would with regards to the financial side.
100%. Beautiful. Josh, this was a great conversation. I enjoyed it. We talked a lot about talked about a lot of good stuff. You shared a lot of good knowledge and wisdom. Where can people find out more about you, your business, and reach out?
Rehabtoperform.com. If you want to learn about Rehab to Perform, you also can follow the business on Instagram. That's probably the biggest platform that it has, almost 70,000 followers and growing. And then myself at Dr. Josh Funk on Instagram. You could connect with me on LinkedIn. And overall, happy to serve as a resource and ideally, either chat about where you're at right now or answer questions that could benefit your health, well-being, or maybe business.
Fantastic. Gang, you've been watching another episode of the Executive Hub Show. Myself, Mustafa Husseini, yours truly, and my guest, Dr. Josh Fung. If you have any questions for Josh, just put them in the comments of the show wherever you're watching, and we'll do our best to get back to you. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on our next episode. Have a great day, and we'll see you later.